Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second episode of the podcast for Toronto Realtors, where we dig into the Toronto real estate market and look into the future of the market and see what agents like yourselves can actually take from those insights and how we can all together further our career. And today we are joined with the great Patrick Rocca. Now, Patrick is no stranger to the media. He is contributing a ton of information and a ton of value to a lot of different publications. And it really is a privilege and a pleasure to have somebody that has had so much success in such a saturated and tough market to dominate in, and he has certainly dominated. So Patrick, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Oliver. I don't think I've ever been called great before, but
Well, there you go. There's a first time for everything. But I'd be surprised. I'm not going to fact check you, but I'd be surprised if that was true.
yeah, well, I've been called a lot of things.
There we go. So generally, the first question that I like to ask is, what are you the most proud of?
That's an interesting question. What am I the most proud of? I mean, I've been doing this 31 years, so I mean, I guess longevity. But I mean, I guess it goes back to when I started in real estate. I mean, I come from a family of real estate. My father was a developer, a big developer on the East Coast. Built shopping malls, hotels, did residential. So I grew up in real estate, and when I decided to go to university, it was my plan wasn't really to get into real estate eventually. I did work with my father off and on. I switched universities partway through my degree from the University of New Brunswick to Ryerson, or TMU as it's now called. And I was sort of a half semester out of whack, and I was done in December and graduating in April, May, and I was like, what do I do with myself for 5, 6 months? And my father said, take your real estate license. Here I am. That wasn't what my degree was in. So I mean, like I said, I come from a real estate background, and it was always part of my upbringing, and going on job sites with my father, and as a kid. So real estate's in my blood. So I guess I'm very proud of that. I'm proud of carrying on that tradition with my family. My two sisters are very actively involved in real estate. They're number 3 in Canada with Royal LePage. So it's like we're all in real estate, and we do fairly well at it. And I think the proud thing is carrying on that tradition, and carrying it on with a reputation, and an ethical value. So I mean, that's what I'm very proud of.
It's interesting. A lot of the stories about how agents actually became agents is they reach a point where they're not sure what's next. And then almost as the default or the fallback, they just get their license because maybe they saw an HGTV episode and they thought, hey, I could do that. That looks pretty fun. And usually it doesn't work out, I think, for agents that just get it because, like, why not? But obviously it certainly did for you. What do you think was different about the way that you approached it at the beginning, or did you do anything different at the beginning in your approach?
Initially, when I got my license, my thought was, I mean, I was working with my dad, so I was on the commercial side, which I hated. And that's how I ended up in residential. So I mean, I worked a year and a bit with my father in development, and in the Ottawa area, and doing a shopping plaza. And I decided that I wanted to get the residential experience. So 31 years ago, I interviewed with brokerages, and here I am 31 years later with the same one, with Bosley. And I liked the residential side of it. It was more of a people business. It was more, emotion, and helping people achieve their goals and dreams, and dealing. The dealings were just so different than the commercial side. So I mean, what made it different? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess if everything would have went according to plan, I would have stayed with my father and worked as a developer. But that wasn't for me. And residential was my, was in my blood. That's something that I really enjoyed.
The connections that you're able to make as a residential agent, you didn't have those same opportunities as a commercial?
Yeah, no, it was just different. I mean, it's a 9 to 5. You're dealing with suits. It's not emotion. I'm a very community-based person. I mean, I came from a small town in New Brunswick, and I live in Leaside now, Leaside-Davisville area, which is very, very much a small community, and I'm very involved. So I just like that side of it.
As somebody who wears your heart on your sleeve. For anybody who doesn't know, you and I, Patrick, right before we started recording, we're talking about some adversity that you faced in your lives and in your life, and it got to the point where you were receiving death threats about your kids. What happened there? What was the story?
Well, I mean, I jokingly said to you, I mean, every day in real estate's adversity. So, yeah, that was a very, very a dark time, about just before COVID, where somebody started stalking me on social media, and sending me, emails, trying to blackmail me, threatening my son who was in law school at that time. Then it came to threatening my daughter who was in university as well. The police were involved, and it went on for a good year. Then it stopped. Then it came back, and it was not a good time. It was very stressful for my family, but on the other hand, it was it really brought out a lot of good in people. The phone calls I received, the support that I received from people in the community, and yeah, it was a very, very trying time, because I mean, it's one thing for me to be threatened and whatnot. I'm a big boy. I can take care of myself. I've always said that. But don't bring my family into it. Don't bring my kids into it. And it was a tough thing. I mean, we plugged through it. The sad thing is that I know who it was, and nothing's ever been done about it. And I don't want to go down that road and start saying how I really feel about our criminal system. But yeah, it's interesting. So, but we move on, and like I said, I mean, adversity brings out, it brought out a lot of good in people, and to this day, I mean, I did a deal with an agent last month, and she sent me a text after the deal, and she goes, "Oh my God, I didn't know. I just heard this about what you went through a few years ago." And I mean, and the support from people was just like overwhelming, and it was a very, very dark time. But it was when I think back on it, there's a lot of good people out there, and this one idiot that decided that he was going to try and take me on. Anyways.
Yeah. They say tough times brings out the worst in people, but it also does sometimes bring out the best in people.
Yeah, 100%.
And I don't want to keep on going back to it, but I am curious. If you could go back in time, would you do, or would you have done anything different?
For this incident?
Yeah, like as you were growing your career, obviously you did it in a very in a public way. Obviously, being a community-based agent, you want to be at the forefront, and you're trying to grow up your legacy and your empire, and it is very public-facing. And I think I actually was mentioning to one of the agents in my office that I was going to be speaking with you, and the very specific question that he wanted to ask was, if you could go back in time, do you see the value, let's say, for new agents to stay in the shadow of bigger agents for an extended period of time, so that they can kind of learn the ropes and not be at the forefront and learn as much as they can from behind the scenes? Or would you once again find it beneficial to just put everything out there and be the public figure that you are?
I mean, I didn't start out as the public figure I'm perceived to be today. It was a lot of learning, and yes, I did. I mean, it's funny. I sat on a panel last week for some new agents in our firm, and we talked just about that, about how when I started 30 odd years ago, I mean, I just didn't jump in and all of a sudden become the lead side guy, and I learned behind a few people, and I remember going on listing presentations with some of the senior agents, and just sitting there and taking in and absorbing everything. And I think that's really important to start off. And I mean, that's the one thing about our company as well. We've got a lot of training and whatnot. So I mean, I think it's very important that you're with somebody who can help you build your business and point you in the right direction, and don't be afraid. I mean, I said to new agents, don't be afraid to go to some of these top people, and including myself, and say, listen, I've got a situation right now where I've got an agent who I know has a client, and I think she probably needs some help, and I'll try and help her out, and we'll split whatever it is, and this is, what you have to learn as a new agent. You may have to give up, 50% of your commission, but don't look at it that way. Look at it as you're learning as well as splitting something with one of these top agents, but you're learning, which is more important. You can't put a dollar value on that, right?
Right. So let's get into the meat and potatoes right now of the Toronto real estate market. We have had a pretty topsy-turvy couple of years. And if you want to extend, obviously, into the US with everything that's happening with the National Association of Realtors and the lawsuit down there. With everything that's changed in the market, how has the expectations of the sellers, both in terms of the commissions they want to pay, the services they expect to receive, how has their expectations changed?
I think this has been ongoing for more than just what's happened in the U.S. with their changes. The reality is there's been downward pressure on commissions for years. This isn't something new, and sellers will always be sellers. They want more than what their properties are a lot of the times are worth, and more so if you go back in the last 4 or 5 years since before COVID. I mean, we had significant swings in value during COVID. And I mean, if you look at 2022, I mean, we're still not back to where we were in 2022. So one of the big challenges today when dealing with people not only is the commissions, and they want everything and they want it for nothing, but it's also value. I mean, people are like still stuck in 2022 where they think that their house is still worth X when it's not. We face those challenges daily with sellers. I mean, so it's not only the value proposition in terms of the commission and what you offer and what you'll do it for. It's also trying to educate your client as to what their value is of their property in today's market, and it's not 2022.
So it sounds like not much has changed at all from the expectations of the sellers.
It has, but it's always evolving, right? Sellers always want more for their properties than what they're worth, right? And that's a given, right? I mean, but if you're doing your job properly and you're educating your clients, they should understand where the value is. I mean, and I walk away from listings. I had a situation just a month ago where the guy wanted 3.9 for his house, and I said, your house is worth 3.4, and he's like, well, my cousin will do it for 3% and he'll give 2% to the other agent. And I'm like, well, good, go list with your cousin. And he did, and it's still sitting there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but these are the challenges we face all the time. And it hasn't really changed all that dramatically. It's just different.
Right. So which lead generation strategy has been working the best for you these days?
It's funny. I mean, if you're talking about lead generation, I mean, I'm very fortunate that I've been in this business for such a long time, and I've built a brand in our community. That and I'm very involved in the community. So I mean, when we talk about lead generation, I mean, I do my emails, I do my newsletters, I do all sorts of marketing and advertising, and I've got my billboards and I've got a brand. So I mean, chances are, if someone's selling in the area, my area, they're calling a couple of agents, and I'm one of them. So I'm lucky that way, but I'm very immersed in the community. I mean, I learned that from a young age. Just going back to with my father. When I was younger, my father was always involved in the community and always gave back, and I think that's very important. And I don't do it for business. I do it because I feel I should. I live here and I work here, and my kids went to school here, and my son played hockey here, and I mean, so I want to give back, and I think that's important.
So kind of merging these past two questions together of number one, which lead generation strategy is working and how has the expectations of sellers changed? I anticipate that you're having less conversations with sellers that are trying to nickel and dime you for your commissions than other agents maybe will be, because your value proposition is pretty much goes everywhere you go, right?
Yes and no. I mean, it always comes down to commission. I mean, it's always, and especially in my area. I mean, my area is very, very and I'm not saying my area is special, but I mean, there's agents that are doing it for next to nothing, and there's that newer. I mean, when I deal, my demographic is a bit different now. I've grown my demographic, so I don't deal with the 20 and 30-year-olds and the 30 and 35-year-old. They're not my demographic. They're a different mindset. How they do business, and how they want to represent themselves, and they want to do all that sort of stuff. My demographic's different. They're more educated. They're more, they're seasoned people. They're people that have lived in the community for a long time, but they still nickel and dime you a bit, and that's
Right.
that's a given, because if they're talking to two or three agents, there's always one that's going to be doing it for next to nothing, and then so it does come down to that. You try to sell your value proposition as much as possible, and it has value for sure. But I mean, you still get hammered on it.
Right. So if I was trying to build up my brand and I was trying to grow my business, I think sort of following the roadmap that you've laid out of being well known in the community and obviously being very active in the news and providing a lot of value, what I anticipate, and I'm kind of going to say statements, and I want you to clarify or adjust something if it's incorrect or where it's been incorrect. My anticipation is that the level of your activity has not only had a significant effect when it comes to the amount of transactions you're getting, but just the presence that you have. There is a value proposition that comes along with that. And I know obviously you are still having these conversations, but if I was trying to grow my business, looking at what you've done, being very well known in the community, brings in a lot more business, as well as it allows me to not have to have as many nickel and diming or lowering the commission conversations as maybe other agents would have. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, there's merit to that for sure. I mean, and it's funny because I was talking with an elderly client of mine this morning, and she was concerned about the market and asked me about a house across the street from hers and why it's not selling. And then she's like, every time your sign goes up, I see a sold sign on it 3 days later. And I've got that brand where people know that I sell my homes and I get my clients good value for their homes, and I'm a hard negotiator. And it's there's a funny story I always tell about an agent that who's now the top agent in our firm. Actually, he came in as a snot-nosed rookie some 15 plus years ago, and his father had a beautiful piece of property in Leaside, and he just got his license, and his dad said, "I'm listing the house," and this guy was all excited. Great, listing the house. I'll get my first listing. He goes, "I'm not listing it with you. I'm listing it with Patrick Rocca, and you're going to learn from him." And I, because he wanted my brand, he wanted my
Yeah.
sign, he wanted my website, he wanted my presence. And this kid, I don't think I had anything to do with his success, because he's very successful now. Um,
Oh, I was going to ask, did he learn?
Sorry?
I was going to ask, and did he learn?
He learned a lot more, not from me, but he's a great agent. David Fleming, I don't know if you know the name, but he's one of our top producers here at Bosley. But yeah, so I mean, there's credence to my name and my brand and my value. So I mean, people want that, right?
Yeah. So in terms of which lead generation strategies working the best right now, like I asked Richard Silva the same question, his answer was social media and very tech based. It sounds like you're more of a traditional. You take more of a traditional approach. Just same answer that you maybe would have given 50 years ago. Get more well known in the community, provide more value, and just more handshakes, right?
Yeah, I'm a handshake type of guy, and I'm a being out in the community type of guy. But I'm on social media. That can be good, that can be bad. My kids are like, "Dad, don't post that." But all joking aside, I mean, I do all those things as well. But yeah, I'm a more traditional type of realtor, and I think that resonates with a lot of people.
Right. So let's get into some predictions of real estate markets. Specifically, let's start with the single family market. What do you think, or what's your interpretation of what's happened over the past year, and what are your predictions for what's going to happen this year?
Well, I've often joked, when I've been interviewed at the Globe and Mail or with any other publications, that my crystal ball is shattered. It shattered during COVID, but I mean, it's been an interesting couple of years. I mean, last year we had a great start to the spring market. It fizzled out a little earlier. Usually fizzles out around mid-June. It fizzled out late May. Summer was quiet, which is traditional, and fall was like all over the map. It was like it started good, it slowed down for a couple of weeks, it ended with a bang. I mean, my November was probably one of my busiest Novembers in my 30 years. This spring has not started out as busy as I thought it would be. And when I say spring and you look outside and we just got dumped on yesterday, 15 centimeters, 20 centimeters, the spring market usually starts around second, third week of January and goes through until June. And normally, you get you get a flurry. And I think there's a lot going on right now with people and their mindset. I mean, you've got the Trump factor, you've got a provincial election, you've got our federal politics, which is a disaster. I mean, so there's just so many moving parts. I've listed and sold a few things in the last couple of weeks, but not as much as I thought. I've had people that were set to go, and they've sort of delayed a bit. So what I thought was going to be a big flurry before March break looks like it's going to be a big flurry after March break. So I think our spring market is going to be a little late starting. I do think it's going to be a good market. I think it's more balanced now. You are seeing the insanity in the lower, like the detached homes, as you mentioned, the semi-detached homes, the lower end stuff is still very, very active. I had a house this last week, 2 offers. It was under $1 million, which is very rare in Toronto. That stuff is still good. The higher end stuff, still a bit softer. And when I
Really?
say the higher end in our community, it's that $3-4 million stuff. But a lot of that stuff is also overpriced.
Oh, that's interesting. So I saw a statistic. Well, I guess I want to get into the luxury market next. I saw a statistic that was really shocking that the luxury market, meaning transactions of 3 million plus, were up 60% in quarter four more than they were in quarter four of the previous year of 2023. Right? So 2023 quarter four was 60% less transactions than quarter four of 2024.
Less or more? Less or more?
More transactions quarter
Yeah.
four of 2024. Do you see that continuing forward, and why do you think that is?
I think you got to look at that. And I think I saw that same article or same study or whatever it was. And I had to scratch my head at it because I think it's really area based. And when you look at, Leaside, Davisville, Midtown area where I work, that $3-4 million is softer. Like it's interesting. Like last fall, I didn't want $3.5 million listings. They weren't selling. They tend, unless it was like a special property on a special street, but a lot of those luxury market homes in our neighborhood are those homes that are custom built, and they're sitting, they're not selling, and they haven't been for a while. But I did recall reading that study that you mentioned, and it's area specific for sure.
So, from which areas do you think that these statistics are referring to?
Not my area. It could be more Rosedale. It could be more Bridle Path area.
Yeah.
But it's definitely not the Leaside, Midtown, Davisville area. I mean, it's more hit and miss in this area when it comes to that luxury market.
Why do you think luxury market almost has sort of its own rules? Why do you
Yeah.
think that is?
Well, I mean, again, it's area specific. I mean, what's luxury in Leaside or Davisville is a starter home in Rosedale.
Right.
So it's like you said, it's got its own rules. It's got its own price points, right? So.
Right. So what's interesting, you kind of mentioned it as well, like you don't want some of these listings. And I remember sort of when COVID started, almost like the barometer for what realtors actually wanted or needed to grow their business, like totally shifted. Like seller leads became all of the rage, and houses were selling for hundreds of thousands of dollars above asking, no conditions, like all cash. Like it was just nuts. And people could have red hot buyers, and realtors just didn't care for them, didn't want them. And what I'm finding now is sort of in a condo market, it's not quite as drastic as that, but specifically in the case that if you would ask an agent maybe a year ago, like, do you want this condo listing? Like, the answer is, of course, yes. But the challenge that agents are having a lot of the time in the condo market is not getting the listings per se, although that's still probably a challenge for a lot of agents, but getting those listings sold. So what are your predictions for the condo market going into 2025, and what has to happen for your predictions to come to fruition?
I think it's going to be a very, very tough condo market. I mean, it's already been tough. I mean, we started noticing it at the end of last year, where I mean, again, it's property specific, building specific. I have a condo I'm listing next week. It's a boutique building. It's a low rise building. It will sell. Like that, certain buildings, certain locations, condos are still selling. It's the high rises with the 500 square foot shoe boxes, as we call them. Those things aren't selling. I mean, they were selling last spring, and I mean, I had one in the fall. I couldn't get a sniffle. It was awful. So I mean, I think downtown is going to be hit hard. I think again, the new construction, pre-con. I mean, we're starting to see projects that aren't even starting. That's where there's a lot of problems. But again, I mean, I evaluated a condo on Friday, and it's in Leaside. It will sell. So certain properties in certain buildings will sell, and they'll sell quickly. I mean, but there's some
Yeah.
I would probably not want to list.
So what has to happen for the downtown Toronto condo market to rebound?
Well, I mean, the foreign tax is really. I mean, this foreign tax has been it's taken a kick in the gut to the condo market, right? I mean, I have clients that they came up from the States last week. They want to move back to Canada. They educated here. They did their doctorates here at U of T. They want to move back to Canada. They're American citizens, and the loopholes that they have to go through, and this foreign buyer ban, it's hurt the market, and I think that has to stop. I mean, yeah, I mean, has there been, bad foreign investors that are just parking their money but that's fueled the market. So I mean, I think that's the big thing that has to change.
So I would ask the same question then for the pre-con market, because you mentioned that they're really having a tough time right now. It was funny, I heard an agent say recently that pre-con is the future of Toronto real estate, which was a very interesting thing, very interesting position to hold. I didn't agree with them.
Yeah.
But what has to happen for the pre-con market to rebound as well?
Well, again, I think it's foreign investment. I mean, we need foreign money. We need foreigners to come in here, and that's who buys these properties. So I think that's the big thing. I mean, rates are low. I mean, relatively speaking. I mean, the cost, like the pre-con. I mean, some of the prices that these newer projects are getting per square foot. I mean, 14, 15, 1,600 bucks a square foot. It's crazy. You can buy resale. I mean, the condo I just evaluated the other day was 750 a foot. It's resale. So, I mean, there's cost issues, building issues. I mean, delays for getting permits. I mean, there's all sorts of things that loopholes that are there. But the foreign buyers. I mean, we need foreign buyers. That's just fuel for our market. And by cutting those people off, it's going to hurt that definitely the condo market and the pre-con market, because that's who buys.
You anticipate there's going to be a world where foreign buyers start to come back to Toronto?
Depends who you talk to. I mean, it really does. I mean, I talk to people. It's sad, but I talk to people daily. Maybe not daily. Let's say weekly, for sure weekly. There's not a week that doesn't go by where I don't get a call where people want to move out of Toronto. Like they're tired of the congestion and the crime and the homelessness, and it's not good. So I get more calls for people that want to move out as opposed to people that want to move in, and that's sad. That's unfortunate for the city, right?
So as one final pearl of wisdom, if you could leave us with before you do go, let's say if you're speaking with an ambitious agent who really wants to make 2025 their best year yet, what's a piece of controversial advice that you would give them?
Controversial?
Controversial.
I don't know if I'd have anything controversial other than work. I mean, I find, and I mean, and I'm sure you see this. I mean, agents probably are the most, they're not structured. They'll do a deal, they'll bugger off for a week or two. You got to be consistent. I mean, I'm in my office this morning at 7:45. I mean, like my day's like clockwork. I'm here, I work, I go to the gym in the afternoon. I come back. I have an appointment this evening. I mean, you got to work, and you know, when it's quiet, you should be prospecting, and you should be doing more, not doing less and taking off and doing other things. I mean, you got to be committed. You got to be structured, and I find that that's agents' biggest downfall. And that's nothing new. Let's be honest. I mean, I've been doing that 31 years, and I've seen agents that have done very well, and they could do better, and then they fizzle out because they're not consistent, and they just don't stick with it, right?
Well, thank you very much, Patrick, for your time. Really appreciate everything you've shared with us today. If anybody listening to this wants to reach you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
You can reach me through my office directly at 416-322-8000. Email is always best. I have my phone with me all the time. Mail, MAIL, at Patrick Rocca, that's ROCCA.com. Love to chat. If anybody has any questions, more than happy to.
Thank you so much, Patrick, and we'll see you on the next episode of the podcast for Toronto Realtors.
Thanks for having me, Oliver. I really appreciate it.